Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Changing the Game. Today, I'm humble and very privileged to have here Terry Rich. So I'm gonna go through Terry bio in a sec, but you're gonna see what I mean. But when I say that we are very fortunate today. So Terry is a disrupted innovator and entrepreneur with a drive for integrity and honesty. He has worked in the trenches, survived the new business trends, and had success with generational changes. So interesting. He has given away over $1 billion. So I think we never had someone in Changing the Game, Terry, that have given away $1 billion. That's definitely a story for us to go through it. So it is time to welcome Terry Rich, fraud busting, creative, and lucky Terry Rich. Welcome, Terry.
Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak. We call it across the pond, as I'm in the middle of the United States at this point. So it's been a fun life, and I love sharing experiences.
That's another privilege as well that you remind me. So Terry is now, well, we are in the middle of the day in Australia and Terry is in US. So it means very late at the night for him. So thank you for that as well, Terry. We're very grateful for that. Terry, I intentionally just introduced a small bio of yourself because there is a bigger version that I would spend, 10 minutes reading it. So what about instead of reading that, I ask you, Terry, what is the, who is Terry and what is the summary of this journey?
I grew up on a small farm, kind of a poor growing up as a child, but I never felt poor. My last name is Rich, and our family always had fun. My dad was always encouraging, and I think that's the start of innovation, is that you encourage people to try something that they really want to do they've never done before. I went to work out of college in television, but I went to work in cable television before cable was really cool, before it was really happening. And they couldn't pay me in a lot of dollars, but they paid me in these things called stock options. And lo and behold, everything became very successful. It's a really fun entrepreneurial company. Everything we touched turned to gold. We helped start MTV, CNN, many of the national HBO, many of the things that you receive now were things that we began creating. Well, at age 40, I got cashed out because somebody came in and took a run at the company and cashed us out. So I went from this big New York Stock Exchange company, a big stock company with a huge base across the United States, and decided to start my own companies. And with that, started 4 or 5 different companies, had a great run for 10 years. And then at age 50, I don't know if they call it midlife crisis, what it is, but I got a call to say, hey, they said you wanted to go off the road. Would you be interested in running a zoo? So I ran a zoo for 10 years. And then at the end of that, things went well. I got a call from the governor of the state who said, hey, we'd like to see, would you be interested in running the lottery? We're looking for someone to run their lottery. So that's how I got to give away $1 billion over the 10 years. So it's been a fun, interesting, right now I travel the world talking about ethics. I talk about innovation. And it's just a great retirement gig to be able to do things like we're doing right here.
It's awesome to hear. So it's extremely unique. So we normally talk here with investors and founders, and we have those more traditional profiles. Now I'm talking with Terry, which I can see by your the way you describe your story. So you are a what we call a serial entrepreneur. You had different companies, different entrepreneurial experiences. And then you came up to service and to give back. So there is this, the story about, tell us more about the companies you founded, a little bit of, what are the top 2, greatest experience you had with your own companies?
Sure. I tell the story that when I grew up, they called me ornery. And then as I got a little bit older in high school and in college, they started calling me creative. And I think to be an entrepreneur, you need to be creative. You need to find something that really is passionate, something you think would change the world, something that is unique to you. Because I worked in cable all those years, I had the opportunity to do a couple of big productions with HBO where we broadcast via satellite. And when we cashed out, I didn't want to move away and go work for another cable company. So I decided to start my own company. And that's innovation. You know, people have a dream. Everybody listening right now probably has that multi-million dollar idea, that big idea that make a lot of money. But until you act, you don't make any money. So it isn't the creativity that made money in the long run and to start your own company. It's the innovation to take that first step. And I just took a small piece of the monies that we made through the cable company and decided if I could just stay at that, if I don't lose that money, I can do it. I didn't have to go out and borrow money. A lot of people have to borrow money, and I did later on as I get into that. But I tried to take less risk and thought, I'm going to go try this idea of doing satellite broadcast, free previews of HBO, where you'd come home and you'd see these free movies on your screen, and then we would come on afterwards and say, hey, you like that movie? Now's the time to call and get HBO in your home. And all of a sudden we were selling millions of dollars worth of HBO on a weekend just by broadcasting via satellite. So I started doing that for HBO, then ESPN, and all these others. And at the same time, I took some of the monies we made from that experience and started a radio station. There was a radio station license, and I always liked rock and roll radio. So heck, that sounds like fun. So started a radio station. And then we also started a TV show called Soccer Slam. Now, why do Soccer Slam? Because I saw on cable television a need. Remember, let's go back to creativity. You probably have an idea that, gosh, this could make me a lot of money, but until you act upon it. And so I thought, I've got some money from these other things I'm doing. I'm going to start a TV show, which maybe will pay in the long run. And the number one show on cable television at the time was World Wrestling Federation, or Rock'em Sock and Wrestling. Well, what other sport is like that in the United States? Well, at the time, soccer, none of the professional soccer players are making any money. So I thought, let's do full contact indoor soccer. So I hired a bunch of professional players to play. We threw in a second ball for the last 2 minutes of each quarter. We hired stuntman to do fighting, and then we did a full theme around it. And we did 4 shows for Fox Sports World that broadcast nationally, and we had a lot of fun with it. So the ways to put, and when people say, how do you begin to become an entrepreneur? I'd look back and say, think about things that you know well, but you could find that one little angle that no one else is doing today that you think you can make money. So in other words, if you're in a decent job, don't just quit and spend your entire life savings. So that if you're having kids or you already got kids, you're going to lose it all. Take just a little bit of that and start building it up. And at some point, you should be able to make enough that you can quit your job and go to work full time with that. That's kind of the angle I did. That reduces your risk and really allows you to feel that creativity in something that you have the desire in your heart to make it successful.
Very nice. There are some very rich pieces there. So when you talk about doing something that you really understand, that getting that sort of, your domain area, your knowledge area, so you don't completely reinvent the wheel, use that knowledge. The other one is an approach to take steps, to so manage risks, taking steps. Don't go and jump all in. Use a piece of that and do it one step. Understand if it works and etc. Until you have enough bandwidth to go full time. I also
learned one other thing in all of that, and that's this: that happiness happens on the way to success. My dad always told me, hey, in the U.S., you get Social Security when you're 62. You get government pays you money when you retire that you put away, obviously, out of your paycheck every week throughout the years. But he always said, guys, work hard for someone. When you turn 62, you're going to be happy. And I realized when we cashed out of the cable and I started doing the things that I enjoyed, that happiness doesn't happen when you reach your goal. Happiness happens on the way to success. So one of the lessons I try to teach my kids and tell other people just getting in or trying to start their own company, do something that makes you happy. Don't do things, if you're putting nuts on bolts every day, all your life, you're not going to be happy. And even when you turn 62, you finally make it, then what do? I see people die after they retire because they just wilt away. So do things that make you happy and find ways today, because happiness does happen on the way to success.
This is so good, Terry. This is actually way deeper, right? So because when we think about the concept of happiness for people, so yes, and some people just always chasing happiness somehow. And what you're saying is, don't keep chasing that happiness that will still come, and the other way around, actually be happy in the journey. So that's pretty good.
Now, I don't always have all, everybody doesn't have all the ideas. I learned so much from everyone else. And that's why you want to surround yourself with successful people. Damon John, who works for a TV show called Shark Tank in the US, and I think that is broadcast internationally. I did a podcast with him a few weeks ago, and I was the MC, and he said something that I thought was something I took home that I'm going to continue to do, and that is, he says every night before he goes to bed, he says, I have a list of 5 or 6 things, and I change it up, down, sideways. Next morning I wake up and I change it. And I said, oh, you mean these are ideas that people have given you to make another big success story and make a lot of money? He said, no. He says, these are ideas that make me happy. It may be I'm going to have Rice Krispies tomorrow morning because I haven't had them for forever, and that's going to make me happy. He looks for things that are easy steps to make himself happy, which is important every day he wakes up, because we all, when we're successful, get everybody picking at us to want us to do this, that, or whatever. And truly, everybody says, well, if I just get that project done, I'm going to be happy. No, happiness happens on the way to success, to find things that make you happy, whether it's going to the ball game with the kids, or whether it's getting a project done can also make you happy. So I thought that was kind of a fun idea to have that list going that does something for you. It sounds selfish, but it really isn't. As you become more and more successful, you'll find that you're always trying to do everything for everybody else.
Very nice. Terry, in the beginning of your story, you're telling a story about working in media and talk about HBO and those companies and your own companies in the media space. So I'm curious, if I chase you, you mentioned about you half century ago you having these experiences. And now in that sort of industry, you have these stories of blockbusters that grew and went down. And have these stories of, the new streaming companies, the Netflixes that come and go down. So what do you think, if someone chases you, say, but you from that time, there was too easy, there wasn't too innovations, now it's very hard because you have, how easy or hard do you think it is to innovate today with all this technology?
It is so much easier with all the technology and so much, a little simple exercises every day. I think as you have success, you're always thinking about what would be the next one I'd really like to do. That's the frustrating thing, because when you retire, you're supposed to kind of kick back, right? But I'm always trying to think, well, even if I go to the grocery store, it took me 12 minutes and 30 seconds. I wonder if I can do it in 12 minutes and 29 seconds. Or as I look around, what could I do differently that would make this image unique? What could I sell to do that? So coming up with the ideas, and I used kind of the expression in a book that I wrote called Dare to Dream, Dare to Act. The idea is, when you brainstorm, when you're trying to get things, think about going to a winery. I thought that winemakers had grapevines behind them, and they just took the grapes off their own grapevines, and that's how they won all the awards. And we go to Napa Valley is where our big area is in the United States and California. But then I realized when I got there that they don't just go out behind they go throughout the valley, because in any given year, the best grape might be over on that side of the mountain where it rained, where it didn't rain, where it was hotter, whether it rained, weather was different one way or the other. So they get a bushel basket and get 100 different grapes, and then they figure out which one is the absolute best. And that's the way to be creative. Is I tell people, when you get together and you're doing brainstorming with your friends, you have less than 8 people, and you say, let's get 100 quick ideas. We need to decide what's going to make us the next dollar, what's going to be the one idea. Everybody give the ideas, but the key is no judgment. Every idea is a good idea, because most people come up with hey, what do you think if we change this widget to yellow? And they look around and see what people are thinking. You can't have judgment when you're trying to dare to dream. So you get 100 ideas, put them aside, don't do anything with them, and then come back. And at that point, and when you're doing that idea generation, you want people who are accountants, who are lawyers, every different nationality. Diversity is so important, because the world today, when you ask me, is it easier today to make more money with creativity or with innovation? Absolutely, because you got the entire world you can go to with the internet. So you want to have as many ideas as possible. You put them aside and then you bring them back, and then you get your group of confidence. You want to have someone who's great in accounting, great in legal, all of that. And that's the time that you together prioritize. And they say, well, this one's going to cost us too much. This one's going to get you sued. And you find that you raise those ideas to the top. So daring to dream, then daring to act, and always remembering whenever you can, every day, write down an idea. You see something, you wake up in the middle of the night, you should have a pencil beside your bed. Write it down. And don't worry about it if you can't do it today or tomorrow, because failure is the first step to success. I can't tell you how many people say, well, you've had all this success. Geez, it just doesn't seem real. I've had a bunch of failures. As every successful person I've ever met and worked with have had tons of failures in their day. And what you want to be able to do is put those together and prioritize what they're, and then get your best confidence that can help you in places where you might be weak, to make that one great idea that you can act upon and make a lot of money.
Yeah, very good. Happy. So if I pick two from that, so one is, yes, dream big. So one thing that I hear about that as well is that dreaming big and dreaming small takes the same effort. So why are you gonna dream small if you can dream big?
Yep. So well, I had my first experience to show you how this works. I had my first experience of failing when I came out of college. I was in the cable television business. I was doing on-camera work, and I realized I was not having this 5 o'clock shadow on TV. So I sat down and I wrote a letter to Schick, the razor company in the United States, and said, hey, I love your razor. I'd love to do a TV commercial for you. I don't get the 5 o'clock shadow, knowing that maybe they would write me and I could go do a TV commercial in New York. Well, I sat around for 2 weeks and had that desire to say, I really want to try to do national television. I'm dreaming big now, much bigger than just a little cable television in the little town. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I get the letter back. And here's what it said. Dear Mr. Rich, expressing your complete satisfaction with your Track 2 razor, we want to tell you, you wrote the wrong company. Schick doesn't make it. Gillette does. I wrote the wrong company. But you know what? The excitement I had after that experience of failing got me excited to try to do all sorts of things. And since that time, I've been on every major network, every cable television network, and networks across the United States. And it came to fruition when I was just a few years later, when I helped promote my local town for a centennial. They said, we're 100 years old. We need some publicity. We only have 50 people in town. Would you help us publicize it? So I just sat down and brainstormed with a guy and said, what could we give away? And we didn't have much, so we gave away a free cemetery plot and a free oil and lube for a car. That's about all we had in town. But I did a press release and sent it out. But I failed because I sent out 44 letters, and I just sent it. I had too many printed off, so I sent it to the New York Times and London and Post, all these different things. You know what? All failed but one. And it failed because that one was from a national wire service who got us on the Johnny Carson show. We went in front of 20 million people and talked about Cooper, Iowa, and my whole career took off. But it's back to I failed, but I failed initially because I wrote the wrong company, but I still had the idea that I wanted to do national television. And when I got to the point of publicizing and actually doing it, I didn't send it to just one, back to that bushel basket. I sent it to 44 different places and only one responded, but that one made a gold mine for me.
Terry, I'm curious because you're touching such an important thing. So as a failure is part of any success, right? So you being you a witness of that and giving your testimony. So, but accepting failure is not that easy. So some people take heart, some people are criticized by others. So, what is your experience in when you fail? What do you do not to put yourself down and suffer with that?
Well, I think first you realize that you can fail at just about anything. I was with a guy named Ted Turner who started CNN and a whole bunch of different channels in the U.S. And I was with him a few years later, and he was very successful. And he was down. I said, "What's up, Ted?" And he said, "You know what?" He said, "I'm worth $500 million now." And he said, "I still have to see a couple of for mental help a couple times a week." And I'm thinking, gosh, if this guy has failed and he succeeded, why can't I? And so I think that I go into projects thinking, yeah, they might, but when they fail, you look at ways, how do I adjust it? How do I make it work again? Think about this. This is a great example. So my grandkids come over. My granddaughter comes over. She's a year and a half. She pulls herself up on the couch on the Davenport, turns around, takes a step. Well, what happens? Boom, she falls on her face. But what does she do? She didn't realize what failure is about. She turns around, pulls herself back up, falls again. Boom. She's done that over and over and over again to the point today she's running all over the house because she didn't realize that failure doesn't mean it can't be done. Think about when we sent 3 people to the moon. Did you know that over 90% of the time they failed because they had to make course corrections? You know, most people do a project and they say, okay, I've got the time, I've got the date, I got the money, or they start a new company. This is exactly how it doesn't quite work somewhere. And so it's over. Well, do you think NASA would have done that when we went to the moon? They'd have said 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blocks off. Okay, we've got this thing planned out. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. No, they failed over 90% of the time. They had to do course correction, but yet that's how they succeeded in getting men to the moon.
Yeah, no, very good. That's a very good point. So today in the startup environment sort of thing, we talk all the time about the pivots, you know, that a successful company needs to do, because that's the only way to be successful. So, Terry, you have in your profile this story about lotteries. I'm very curious, right? So I'm originally from Brazil, and I remember this might be 20 years ago, might be a little bit more than that, maybe 30 years ago. So there was a story about this politician that had a huge wealth, and people start to investigate it, you know, where that wealth came from, being a politician. And they found out that this politician won the lottery like 10 times. Obviously a big scandal, and that story goes on. But coming back to your experience, because you mentioned about that sort of a work ethics and going after, you know, resolving fraud in lottery. So what can you tell us about that? What is that story?
Sure. Well, I think that, as you can tell, I like promotion. I like telling stories. I like marketing. But as a lottery director, you get to do all of that big time with big dollars. But about 3 or 4 years into my career as the lottery director, I got to learn about ethics and fraud. And what I found out was we had a winner for a big jackpot, the largest one of the largest jackpots of a regional game. It's about $16.5 million. And someone won it, but no one showed up to claim it. And for a year, we barked, hey, now's the time to get money. It's about to expire, that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, we get a call from Canada from a lawyer who said, hey, I've got the ticket. Just I'll send you the ticket. You send me the $16.5 million. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, right. When it's all said and done, we tracked it all down. It took us almost 6 years to find out that it was a external vendor who was the company that created the computers that drew the lottery numbers. And this one vendor had manipulated and put in a code so that one time every single year, he could figure out the numbers for this. And so he did it for one of the largest jackpots in this regional game. He won, gave it to his friend, and it went all over the U.S. by the time it was done. And we busted it. And I had a lot of, you know, it took a lot of investigation, a lot of people, a lot of dedicated work. But we ultimately cracked it and found that he not only did it in our state, but he did it in 4 or 5 other states. And he had it in up to 50 different computers across the entire United States. So CBS called it the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history that we busted. Here's the moral of the story. If you're thinking about doing something fraudulent within your company, don't, because today, first place police go to, where do you believe it'd be? First off, all your social media. They'll look at all the social media. They'll go out and look at that. They'll look at your cell phone and all your contacts. And it was so easy for them to find out where this guy was standing, how he bought, the day he bought it, where he had tracked and where he'd bought tickets. It was unbelievable. But more importantly, if you own a company, especially small companies, an entrepreneur, to have checks and balances. People hate policies. I don't, travel. Why do I have to? I lost my invoice. Why do I have to turn in an invoice? Well, those are checks and balances so that people don't create fraud. And that's really, really important that you have checks and balances within your organization, and that one person doesn't hold all the keys of the kingdom. And that ultimately is what happened here. This person wrote the code, compiled the code, oversaw the computer that drew the numbers, and it took a lot of investigation, but he ultimately got busted and got thrown in prison.
Very interesting. So, and I suppose that, you know, as part of that job is in the lottery organization. So you came back to that original creativity, innovation, to do an entrepreneur, to go after those things. So I think I read that you do have some tips for actually organizations that that are looking for that sort of, now, how can I be more innovative? How can I be more creative in our organization sense? So what do you think? Because when you talk about entrepreneurs, there is a set of assumption that entrepreneurs have that sort of thing. But when we have large organizations, there is an assumption that, you know, is a slower mover and etc. So how can we get an organization to be less slow?
Yeah, some real easy little things that done, just like having a policy that says when you sign in, when you are an employee, if you steal, you will be fired. Everybody needs that little devil on the shoulder, say, yeah, you know, there are three real key elements for internal fraud. Number one is financial need. So if I'm working in an organization or my friend's working, it's, you know, little churches and schools have problems because Aunt Susie is the business manager, and she does fine. She doesn't need, and then all of a sudden maybe she starts gambling, or she goes through a divorce and she needs that money really bad. Well, the second piece is opportunity. If she doesn't have the opportunity to steal, she's not going to. If she's not in charge of the book, she can't really steal any money. If she writes the purchase orders and writes the checks, yeah, you got a chance for fraud. You need to separate those duties. So the opportunity is the second piece, financial need, and then having the opportunity to control. We all probably have opportunity, but the final piece is the hardest to oversee, but that's where policies and procedures come in. And that's rationalization. At what point does an employee say, I deserve it? You know, that maybe they're working really hard. Maybe we work them nights and weekends. Maybe they, you know, I'm trying to get my kids through college. So I have the financial need. I rationalize this. I'm just going to take a little. And most people take a little, and then they take a little more, and they take a little more, and then they get caught. So having those three keys and thinking about in your organization, if you see someone who's going through a divorce, that's got gambling, drinking problems, drug problems, you know, you kind of watch them a little more. You have a little more oversight. If they make sure they have separation of duties so that 2 or 3 people approve things. And then finally, the rationalization. People are complaining that, you know, I deserve more, and we all want to make more money, but you can usually spot people who are at the point of saying, screw it, I'm gonna take some money from the company because I deserve it. That's rationalization.
Interesting. So Terry, with this such, you know, Terry rich with such a rich life, say, and today you talk about some sort of fun that you have into retirement or retirement, I guess. So what is fun for you today? What do you do that you enjoy and you know, keep your passion up?
Yeah, I think family is one for sure. Learning something new, having experiences like this with you tonight, talking across the world technologically, and as you say, new ideas. Well, this is what I do. I've done taking my public speaking, which I travel around the world doing, and started doing them virtually during COVID. You pivot, you look for ways to continue to make the monies that you had before. So what's fun for me is I get paid to go across the world. They pay me to fly in. I do a speech, get money, and then I stay 2 or 3 days, and I get to see sites I've never seen before from a little farm kid from Iowa in the United States. And that is interesting. That's fun. And then coming home to the family and fun things. All my kids live here. All my grandkids are close. Most people don't get that in life. So that's kind of the fun things I enjoy doing. Besides, I got into biking at my old age. I want to live a few more years and see my kids graduate.
Very nice. So is there anything you regret?
Yeah, I think that I get asked quite often, if you were 21 again, what were 2 things you'd tell people. The first one is the easiest in being successful, and that is always raise your hand. If you start in a company and someone says the bathrooms are dirty, water closet's dirty, be the first to go in and clean it when nobody else wants to, or there's a project no one else wants to do, or something's cantankerous, be the first to volunteer. You'll be noticed and you will do well. The other is something I have a regret, and that's I wish I'd have learned early on how to relax, how to once in a while completely disconnect. When you get success, it's like a drug in its own way. I guess it's like cocaine when you have success, because once you feel it and you've done it, you want to do it again and do it again. And I've learned I never ever take everything I've just earned and made in a big project and reinvest everything, because you'd lose it all. So I try to do a little bit. I try to only take a piece of anything, so my risk is much lower. But I think the regret of being able to relax more instead of always thinking about, okay, what's next? It's what's going to be fun. And I've got 2 TV documentaries in the works right now at my ripe old age of 70 that I hope to have produced in the next 2 years. One on the lottery fraud, one on the Soccer Slam TV show, that continue to kind of excite me and get me excited to wake up in the morning.
Interesting. So, well, look,
and remember, I got one more thing. Remember back earlier when I talked about the bushel basket?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you tell I still have my bushel basket? I'm still trying to think of all the different things that I still can do. I mean, that's what keeps me going, is trying to think of that next fun thing to throw in the basket that I can maybe consider at some point. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, very nice. And I like that sort of, that reflection on, I would love to have learned to relax earlier. So it's really, it does take some time for you to realize that, we don't need the rush that we think we need when we're 20. Terry, we got to learn more about, the idea man, the innovator, had startups and went into giving back a service in other organizations. So, question is, do you invest? How do you see that sort of the new entrepreneurs? Do you invest in them, whether it's money or helping with your own ideas, etc.? And on top of the same question, how you see all these new things like cryptocurrencies and metaverse, these new things that are claiming to be disrupting the world soon. So how you see those things?
I think it's the old, they call it P.T. Barnum, right? Barnum and Bailey Circus. You're a pitch person like I am. I see anything as something that could be successful. You just got to look at it the right way, right? So I think those are good. My desire is I don't invest in crypto because I don't understand it as well. So I like to do things that I understand. That's why I went 4 different careers. I understand a little about a lot of things. So I find the things that I get passionate about that I think other people, that I've seen other people wanting, and that's kind of what I try to invest in. So I don't want to be, we often said in any business that I've owned or any business I've been in, especially cable television, we don't want to be first, we want to be second or third. Let somebody else be the cutting edge. And get in before, it's absolutely, everybody's in and it won't grow anymore, and look for ways. But I like to also look for things that, take the zoo, for example. When I walked into the zoo, they were losing $600,000. A zoo's a zoo, right? What can you do to make a zoo different? Well, it's back to the creativity and trying to do something innovative with something that you already have some feel for. And the idea was kids go to the zoo no matter when, so we've got to get young adults going. So what was the idea? Well, we started Zoo Brew. Young adults don't want to be there when all the little kids are there. So what they did was we opened the zoo at night, had band, and we served what they wanted: beer, booze. So we made $250,000 in a summer, as they're doing now, and cash flowed the zoo immediately. Or we looked for things, they said, you need a new exhibit, a new animal, and it's going to cost $2 million. We started thinking, well, what do we have a lot of that we could do that we could still bring the kids in and the rest of the people? We thought, well, the animals poop. Why couldn't we do an exhibit on poop and show all the different kinds of poops from the different animals? And the kids would giggle and the parents would giggle. And then we figured out that tiger poop, we have white-tailed deer in Iowa, and they eat all the plants. Tiger poop is a natural predator smell, although a deer's never seen a tiger. And so what we did is we sold tiger poop for $20 a bucket, and it kept deer away from people's flowers, and we made $20,000 on that. So being innovative just isn't always brand new ideas. Even the lottery, I increased the profits from $58 million to $90 million in those 10 years just by blocking and tackling, doing some basics of trying to be innovative on new ways to sell lottery tickets. So, you know, I think you can make just as much on something that you might know if you're working in an industry now. What's the one or two things that might make it even better that people might buy?
That's awesome, Terry. Terry, as I mentioned in the beginning, that 30 minutes go like flash. I am concerned that, you know, with our privilege of having you at 11 p.m. And you need to get your rest. So I can't put words in how grateful I am, and I'm pretty sure that all the listeners will be as well, of your generosity, right? So your stories are fantastic. I love it.
I appreciate that.
I just feel grateful. So thank you very much. I hope we can stay connected and, you know, hear from you again in the future.
Absolutely. And I've got you know, my website is terryspeaks.com, just TERRY speaks, like speaking.com. And you'll see the two different things that I speak about. And I'd love to come over and see anybody in Australia, and love to have you come to the US and say hi here too. But in either way, you know, having a new virtual friend is really pretty cool. So thank you, Wilson.
No worries. Thank you very much. And everyone, this is Terry Rich. I think you will agree with me how privileged we were. Until the next episode of The Changing the Game.